Right, I've got Niko House here today. So, Niko, thanks a lot coming aboard to New Progressive Voice.
No problem at all, man. I appreciate you having me.
For those that don't know, Niko is YouTube host for over at Mikasa Sukasa.
Yeah, MCSV Network. My show is called Mikasa Tsukasa.
Okay, and if you're interested, his YouTube channel linked below in the description section. I reached out to Niko. He agreed to have a discussion about really two items I'm looking at. Mainly, the main focus is going to be on whether or not progressives should support Joe Biden or not by voting for him. This is not really a debate per se. It will, of course, have back and forth and fourth hour points as to why we agree or disagree with each other. So, Niko, let's start right away. Tell me your thoughts on why you believe not voting for Joe Biden would be the best path moving forward for progressives.
Well, honestly, I would like to hear why you think that voting for him would be the best path forward. I'm curious because I've heard different arguments from different people, so I'm curious as to what yours is.
Okay, so you want to put me in the defensive position. Fair enough.
Well, I
Um,
mean, honestly,
mhm.
saying you want to vote for Joe Biden at all puts you in a defensive position. I'm just saying.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let me make a number of pre-statements. First off, as Niko may or may not know, and some of the listeners here may or may not know, I always have been a very strong supporter of Bernie Sanders ever since 2015. I started my YouTube channel for that reason. When he got out of the race, I went on to vote for Joe Stein. So I don't at all. I'm not opposed to voting for a third party if necessary, but I'm in a safe state. That's California. I'm still there. I was there in 2016. I get the mindset behind why somebody might want to vote for a third party or not vote for the DNC candidate because they don't want to reward the DNC. I get all those arguments. My main frame of reference has to do with where is our strategy moving forward? Is it going to be a codependent relationship with the DNC, or are we going to have a relationship that is independent of the DNC, meaning we are actually going to start forging ahead with our own agenda? And what kind of environment or context do we want to function within, independently or codependently of the DNC? So that's my frame of reference. That's the main reason I believe voting Joe Biden would be the best approach moving forward versus not voting for him. Go
Well,
along.
what? Yeah, because I guess I'm confused because I don't see how voting for Joe Biden, even say if you chose the option of codependency, voting for Joe Biden gives us no assurance that even in codependency will the DNC allow any of our agenda as progressives to be pushed. I mean, when we had actually leverage, right? Because we knew that we had a possible 2020 run by Bernie Sanders. We got a unity commission that clearly was a vanity project. Um, I mean, I don't know how much you know about the Keith Ellison Tom Perez race, but there were a lot of shenanigans. People that were there acknowledged it, and yet Keith Ellison was still cheated out, and Tom Perez was still put in power. Then he subsequently exerted pressure on these states to adopt these systems that are either whether you want to talk about the shadow app or whether you want to talk about the fact that these states that used to be caucus states that where he won all of them, they were converted to states where basically every state is now a voting machine with no paper ballots and no way to do a paper ballot backup. Not to mention, they have not conceded. I mean, if anything, they've managed to co-opt the message and even convince some people that they're going to try and make legitimate gains. But as we have seen, the House of Representatives currently has the majority by far. And they even drafted up legislation with a lot of co-sponsors for Medicare for All. And it's, I might add, better than the Senate's version. John Powell led the way on that, and that was a great bill. However, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have not allowed it to go to a floor vote.
Hmm.
So
Okay. Hmm.
what exactly are we gaining as a movement by saying, you know what, maybe we can hold them accountable next time, but let's elect Joe Biden this time?
Very good points. Fair points. Absolutely. We have struggled with the DNC with the establishment, with Tom Perez, ever since 2015 when Bernie Sanders came on the scene. And we tried to get third party 5%. They did not. Even though Joe Stein is far more popular than Howie is, she was still not able to get 5%. So our frame of reference has always been, what can the DNC do for us? And how can we pressure them to do for us? And every time we fail. And we have yet to really take a look at why we continue to fail as a progressive movement and ask ourselves, what can we do to get in a position where we have better leverage? I feel part of this is because we don't have a cohesion or a coalition, alliances. We're scattered. We're weaker now and more fractured than ever than we were in 2016. You know, between Yang, Tulsi, Bernie, Marianne Williamson. And I think this is because we don't have a strategic plan that's clear and sound, that is independently minded, where we have leverage, much similar to the evangelical party has with the relationship with the RNC outside of the Republican Party. We're trying to work within the DNC. We're trying to leverage them. We're waiting like children, mommy and daddy, when you're going to come and answer, give us what we want for Christmas. Okay? When the reality is we are having these elections short of course, rigging, which, there's different arguments on that, where you speak to Greg Palast, which I've had on my program before, so I get all that stuff, okay? But to get more direct to what you're getting at, answer to that. When I talk about codependent relationship, I'm actually saying the opposite of what you maybe were thinking I was intended, so maybe I didn't make myself clear. What I'm saying is we're not likely going to get anything Biden promises us. We know that. So this idea that we can, hold them hostage by holding back our votes is a really, really bad strategy, because for several reasons. Number one, it's cognitive dissonance.
Hold on, but I'm not arguing that we're holding him hostage by not offering our votes, because he's going to be beat anyway. So that's like that argument is irrelevant to me personally. My argument is that it's literally requires you to sacrifice your integrity to vote for him. And strategically, it doesn't make any sense, because maybe if some people are okay with sacrificing their integrity, whatever, that's cool. But even still, strategically, you could end up paying for it by trying to by making the decision to vote for Joe Biden in a situation where there's no way you stand to benefit from it, and there are far more negative consequences for him to be in office anyway. Even if because he's not going to win, but even if he would have a chance to win. Say just something happened to Trump and he ends up winning. There are far more negative consequences that are possible than any positive consequences.
Okay, you've covered a lot of territory, so let's break this down one step at a time. So first off, I'm not willing to go out on a limb and say he is going to lose. I don't know that, honestly. Right now, the polls I have in my head, even though the same was for Hillary Clinton, so I get that. The coalition.
49% of nobody has had a 49% approval rating in an election year and lost.
Okay, I get all of your arguments.
After the impeachment, I'm just saying.
But I do know there is one thing for certain: if we do withhold our votes, he definitely will lose. If progressives get behind him, then there's at least a small chance that he might be able to, pull it off. So going to that point, we really can't answer that. I mean, we're just going to make speculation. You may be just as right as I am, okay? But I do know one thing. If we withhold our votes, he definitely is more likely to lose. Okay, second point that you made is this idea of principles. Would you say that as far as what you know about me, Niko, that you consider me a principled person?
I consider you, from what I've seen so far, from last year. So okay. I consider you to be principled.
So I'm still thinking of our long-term strategy. It's principle to me isn't about living in an idealistic world all the time where you would like to be at my way or the highway. That works in some instances, like the civil rights movement, but there have to be a lot of elements that line up for that type of formula to come together. All right, and we're frankly just not. Now, the CV crisis has maybe brought about that possibility, but we're under a president that makes it more difficult, and the CV itself making it more difficult for there to be mass movements of protest, and having a sharp leader that's at the helm, and unfortunately Bernie Sanders is not willing to be that sharp leader. So who's going to take it over? Nina Turner? So we're fractured, we're in disarray. Now, so principle to me is not about living, it's living in your heart with ideas and principles that you adhere to and you follow. But the difference of success is whether or not you're practical in your approach to those ends. All right, now that's the third piece that you just brought up, which we may disagree on. Now, you brought up that you believe the most sound, practical strategy moving forward and the most principled, which I don't necessarily think that it talks about principle, because for me, I'm just as principled as you are. I just have a different vision of how to get there and sooner. Your idea is that let's do what we did in 2016 again, which it failed. And it's relying on the DNC.
No, that's not my idea. I don't know where you assume that
okay,
was my
well,
idea.
let's clarify that. Let's clarify. Tell me what your idea is.
The reason this conversation started is because you were proposing that Trump, that Biden was the lesser of two evils. And you made it sound like this is an absolute, non-debatable, non-negotiable proposal. And I was saying, no, that's absolutely not true.
That's the third point. That's the third point. I'm not disagreeing with you. That's your third point. That's what I'm saying. But your third point is still rooted in doing what we did in 2016, isn't it? People did different things in 2016. I'm not going to try and pretend like everybody's goal was my goal. My goal in 2016 was to not only, first of all, not vote for Hillary Clinton, because that shit was not happening. Not only vote for Joe Stein, I was a surrogate for her as well, but also accountability. There was a level of accountability that needed to be had, because the DNC needed to ensure that, or we needed to ensure the DNC that if you try and pull this again, we will have a louder microphone, a louder platform to call this out next time, and you will lose again. Do we have a louder microphone? Do we actually have a louder microphone and a more cohesive, larger base than we did in 2016?
We do have we have a louder microphone. Regarding this particular topic, I mean, right now, Kyle Kalinske, Mike Figueredo, Crystal Ball, and a plethora of others who are the crux of Bernie's movement as far as pushing, his message specifically and kind of guiding the conversation. All three of them all feel the exact same way. And somebody can make an argument that, their over-pushing of Bernie is kind of what led us so splintered, because they held everyone else to the standard that they didn't even hold Bernie himself to. So when you're talking about the people who originally were boosting Bernie the most are all saying now, we're not on that Biden wave like you all are on. We are we may be splintered when it comes to who the leader is, but that's irrelevant. It's not about who the leader is. It's, do we all generally agree that this is a bad idea and we would literally be legitimizing an illegitimate election and an illegitimate candidate? Okay, now we ask next, what are the consequences of letting the DNC know that if you behave like this, we will still reward you despite having a literal segregationist as your nominee after you gaslight us for an entire year about how much you care about these issues that affect marginalized people. And because that's essentially what you'd be doing. Is it worth it to let the DNC know once again that they can get away with rigging? Then, on top of that, is it worth it for what may come next if progressives do get behind Joe Biden? My end goal is, one, accountability.
Okay, but what does that look like? Tell me what you imagine that will look like.
There are several different ways. Getting their asses handed to them in the general election is one level of accountability. Two, we need accountability from our elected leaders.
And what do you imagine?
Not elected leaders.
Okay,
leaders.
So let's just say that Biden actually loses. Okay, what do you imagine will happen next?
On the bet, anybody want to DM me and bet some money on this? I'm more than willing.
Fair enough. But let's just say that he does. We're going to go with your bet, and we say that he loses. All right. Now, what is the next step? What would be the next thing to happen in your mind? How would the DNC respond? How would they respond to that?
I'm not counting on the DNC to respond in any given way for me to base my next from the move that I'm trying to make next, or what I would expect the movement to make next. The next step would be, maybe it depends. It also depends on who you are, right? So whether maybe you're building up the Green Party, maybe you're in the movement for the People's Party with Nick Branya, maybe you are candidate-based because of your specific skill set, whatever. But there has to be an organizational effort to, once again, push for accountability of the DNC. For example, everybody should know by now that I started the DNC fraud lawsuit, which is a lawsuit against the DNC for $900 million. That's
Wow.
one type of way to hold the DNC. Huh?
That's great. That's great. Go. I
Oh
love it.
yeah, yeah. We're in the Supreme Court right now. We're in the Supreme Court right now, but this is the type of stuff. When we're talking about accountability, we have to grow awareness of the ways that people are trying to hold the DNC accountable,
Okay,
right?
that's
So,
fair. That's a fair point, and I love that. I love to hear it. That's great. That's what I know about
yeah.
you. Uh,
So
but
but I also, obviously, like I said, I was a surrogate for Jill Stein in 2016 too. So I wanted to show people the importance of acknowledging these other third parties and also boosting them and bolstering them, because the problem with the DNC is a lack of parity. That's one of the main. I know it's the money in politics and all that good stuff. That's part of it, but it's also because, effectively, quote unquote, there is no other option. So when I get involved with the third parties, and I've been involved in the movement for the People's Party, Green Party, etc., one of the first conversations I have with any of these candidates and with any of the officials is about, well, what are you trying to do to achieve viability? Because now that I'm a part of that conversation, and I'm like, you see all these people who are coming, they're not going to stay without viability. You don't know how many times the DNC is going to make this mistake. So then we start talking to candidates, various Green Party candidates, and various leaders in the Green Party to help them understand the importance of viability and further that conversation to introduce ballot initiatives. And
okay, so what's the game plan in terms of time frame? Like, what do you imagine is a realistic time frame for this to
Time
unfold?
frame, I don't like to mess with. I don't like to mess with time frame because, as we have seen historically, you might think you're on track to see one outcome, and then like a Donald Trump gets elected. Or you might think you're on track to see one outcome, and then like Biden comes into the picture, and Elizabeth Warren decides to say that you are
Okay,
the
so
most sexy
are you saying that
but,
is what your point? Your point seems to be. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your point seems to be if we withhold our vote and Biden loses, then it will allow people to kind of see that the DNC strategy of withholding, whatever we're asking from them isn't working. It's blowing up in their face, and thus it will.
Them ignoring their voters, right? Their base is not working. It didn't work last time. It didn't work this time. It's not going to work the next time either. And as people get more educated, as more people participate in social media and get more involved in politics, which, by the way, historically speaking, people are more involved and more active in politics now than they've ever been. And partially that's the reason why the Democrats saw a drop in registrations this year. Now, 28% of the country views themselves as Democrat, 28% of the country views themselves as Republican, 44% as of December 2019 views themselves as an independent of some kind.
Okay, so now in terms of like strategy wise outside the Biden discussion, I think we kind of agree in terms of we do realize we need to build some type of coalition, whether it's getting behind a third party or it's forming our own independent coalition. I think we fairly agree on that.
Yeah, and it needs to be done. That's what happens. So right now, everybody's talking about either Howie Hawkins or Dario Hunter, and some people are talking about Libertarian Party. But at the end of the day, and this is something I had a conversation with Dario when he came on my show, which is, well, what has the Green Party done to get on the debate stage since 2016? Nothing. In fact, there were some efforts within the Green Party, which was a different conversation, to stop Jill from suing to figure out what states were stolen, if they were stolen. If they had taken some of her votes away from her, which there were votes taken away from her. So, those are questions we got to start answering, not 4 years from now when the next election comes up, but right now, and then start making efforts to reconcile those issues. But overall, we can't possibly, if people have a disproportionate amount of faith that they can somehow persuade the DNC to do something opposite of what they've been known to do for literally a century and a half, damn near, then they will never get to the point of being invested enough to do the work that it takes to build up another party or build up multiple parties or completely reshape the system so that it becomes more viable. Because there are parties that are out there that are actually, like, if you change the system, like the Working Families Party, they might actually achieve viability quickly, because a lot of people that are also in the Democratic Party are also Working Families Party. So because of that, they would actually achieve ballot access rather quickly if we started reshaping the system. But they're focused on maintaining the DNC and the Democratic Party, and propping up those candidates because they're worried about viability themselves. And so, once again, ultimately, the structure, the system, and the infrastructure needs to be completely remolded and reshaped. We have to multitask. We have to take a multi-pronged approach, which includes building up third parties. And I believe that we need more than one third party. Can't just have the Green Party. Can't just have the Move for the People's Party. Now, you can have people that participate in both, right? But you can't pick one or the other, and then smear the other party because you're just trying to get people for yourself, because you're just going to have the same problem. You got to make a legitimate threat. And with 44% of the independent vote out there up for grabs, you don't need even 10% to be a legitimate threat in the general election.
Well, there is a lot of data out there that suggests all you really need is about 25% of the electorate, because half the electorate doesn't even vote to win a general election. Now, setting that aside, however, everything you're talking about, we don't necessarily disagree on. It's just a matter of nuance and how we go about doing it, time frame, all those kinds of things. The real question in my mind is about, okay, so you're suggesting if we withhold votes from Biden, it's going to likely cause the DNC to lose again. As a result, people are going to become more disillusioned with the Democratic Party. More people will want to look for something else because they're not winning. They keep losing to the Republicans. That's your point, correct?
They're going to look for something else. Also, even if they don't look for something else, maybe they do get disenchanted with the process. But these are probably going to be the casual Dems who only vote in general elections. And they're like, okay, I'm just not going to deal with the Democrats anymore. It's just how they're going to keep playing. Now, it would be nice to have them go for third party. It would be nice to have them become more, organizational, but that's probably not going to happen. But if they're not voting Dem, that's still a victory for third parties as they bring in new and active voters and work to change that system.
Okay.
What we need is a simultaneous hemorrhaging of the Democratic Party, which started in 2016, by the way, and it's continuing. And we know for a fact, right? Donald Trump is out the next election. So now we have a chance to kind of build up a populist message, continue this populist movement that was started in 2015, 2016. And we have to then pick candidates and show support behind those who adhere to that populist message, rather than setting the standard, okay, Bernie says this, so therefore everything must be in line, like with what Bernie has suggested. And because that's simply not winnable. In fact, that's largely why the movement has become so fractured.
Okay.
So if we put Biden in, you're looking at a possibility of 12 to 16 years of neoliberalism. That's what you're looking at possibly. Because Biden's going to go in, he'll probably serve that 4 years. He's not going to be in charge of his cabinet. And the things that he is in charge of, I'm not sure I'm too happy with him or okay with him being in charge of that stuff. Like, we know that Citigroup picked Obama's cabinet, so who's picking Joe Biden? It's probably going to be worse pick because he's not even going to push back, right? This is Biden. He's not all there at the moment. So now we get to the Supreme Court judge argument that I love when people make it, because it doesn't make any sense. We can't ignore Clarence Thomas. We can't ignore Scalia. And we can't really say with any certainty what even a liberal judge that he went hard for. Like, I'm going to make sure this liberal judge gets appointed no matter what. No, never happened.
Okay, well, let me interject because you made so many points there, but I want to counter some of those. First off, let's get to the justice thing, which I agree, but you're using a 1980s, 1990 context when actually those judges were considered moderates. In today's world, absolutely. People have evolved. Back in the 80s, you'd be pressed to get 10% of people supporting same-sex marriage or legalizing marijuana. We live in a different world. Secondly, you are also overlooking that they also appointed Hagel and Sotomayor that are liberal judges under Obama, and Biden was part of that process. Okay, so that's we have to be fair-minded here.
Or something?
Sorry.
Did he pick him? I mean, if Obama says this is who I want. Now, here's some kind of proof or messaging where it shows Biden had a hand in picking these judges. That's different. But he also, if I'm not mistaken, he picked those in the first 4 years, correct?
I don't really know the time frame, but I'm just looking
I'm
looking at his overall
There's a reason
history.
I'm asking, though.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason I'm asking, though, because that's with no pressure. That's with nothing. You don't need a bargaining chip to get anything that you want passed. Remember, This is the same administration, despite what they like to make us forget. TPP, he championed, and they haven't forgotten. They've still been lobbying to get something like TPP, even if they have to rebrand it.
Well, I'm not going to defend Joe Biden's history because you and I both are not big fans of Joe Biden's history. But here's
what I'm saying. It's important to help you understand the point I'm trying to make. We are assuming, like, based off the argument that where those two judges were picked in a dominant Democrat Senate and executive office, where we know that Joe Biden is not winning back the House and the Senate if he wins this White House. There's no way. It's not happening. He does not generate that much excitement. And if the Democrats don't come out and vote,
without the progressives, that will be absolutely true. Okay? But now, I wouldn't say absolutely true, but I'd be more inclined to agree with you. If we withhold our vote as a coalition, progressives withhold our vote, I'm more inclined to agree with you. Now, the second point I want to make, let me ask you, Niko, because...
But I'm not finished. I haven't been able to make... I never got to my conclusion. My point is, if you don't win both the House and the Senate, now to get those neoliberal policies that you absolutely want passed, you have to have a bargaining chip, don't you? And that bargaining chip, they already set that play in motion when they allowed Kennedy to leave the bench with not a peep, not a whisper, didn't beg him to stay because of how valuable that Supreme Court seat was. No, the moment that he left, instead of begging him to stay, they said, hey, you got to vote for us now because of the SCOTUS, because of the Supreme Court. It's a neoliberal argument, not saying that I understand why you're making that argument, but it's a neoliberal argument that is very similar. Like the argument that they made about the popular vote. All of a sudden, the popular vote is the most important vote with no context whatsoever. So when you get rid of the electoral college, because they know that they can game the system that way in its current state.
Well, it's a what I do know, Niko, what I do know right now is Biden has made it very clear. He's already listed at least 3 justices. They're all 3 of them are African American. 2 of them are African American women that are moderate to liberal judges. The third one is Obama. I know those are the 3 that he's already put out there. Now, I don't want to go into that argument as to what he will really do or won't do, because you and I know the DNC are not that reliable in keeping their word, aka Obama. Okay, but I want to ask you, getting in terms of that discussion about, like, can people change? A prime example is Tulsi Gabbard herself. Look at the way she used to vote in 2020 or 2012 versus today. Did she change?
But she also doesn't take corporate money. And in she has bill and legislation that also backs her evolution. Like she has tangible evidence that she has had a genuine evolution. And that evolution, by the way, didn't start in 2020 when she decided to run for president.
Yeah, I agree with that. But Biden also has evidence of having changed as well, like his same-sex. He was the first vice president to ever come out and support a same-sex marriage. He was the first one to announce that we need to look into some of these drugs, like and some of the criminal justice around certain types of drugs, and limiting what type of rehabilitation they get out of prison. Those didn't exist prior. Yes, he has a really bad criminal record.
What do you mean by that last statement? Because last time I checked, he refused to apologize for what the '94 crime bill did. He was very... No,
you're correct. That's absolutely right. However, at the same time, he passed the Second Chance Act, which allows counseling and monitoring of former prison inmates that didn't exist prior. Fair Sentencing Act of 2012. So he has done some things. And what he's setting forth today, we're talking about the 2010s. We're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard today and what she's become. Then it's only fair to also talk about Joe Biden, what he is today, not what he was in 1980.
It has to be context. I'm not talking about 1980. I know for a fact, as vice president, he worked his ass off to ensure that cancer drugs are unaffordable overseas still on behalf of Big Pharma. Literally threatened them. Use this leverage to threaten them. We know during his campaign, during his time as vice president, he leveraged the United States foreign aid to Ukraine against that country so they wouldn't prosecute his son while he's working on Burisma.
It's a very black and white. Each politician is very black and white. They aren't just one color. He isn't just all bad. He also has some good. Just like Tulsi Gabbard, she actually endorsed Joe Biden.
No, but that doesn't matter. I don't care what. I'm friends with Tulsi. Tulsi knows I don't give a damn.
No, I know you're friends with her, but I'm asking you: do you agree with that, or you disagree with that?
No, she signed a contract that said she would endorse the nominee and made it very clear.
Absolutely.
I'm endorsing Joe Biden. only because he is the nominee. Like, she made it very clear, and then she went on a tirade about how she plans on using the rest of her time spent in Congress helping out with the coronavirus situation. And she has not said a positive word or a negative word, but not a positive word about Joe Biden. She's not fundraising for Joe Biden. You're not seeing one fundraising email for Joe Biden. You have not seen her come on TV to talk about Joe Biden. That was it. And that because she was only trying to fulfill a contract. I think we can read between the lines when it comes to things. But when it comes, when you say black and white, no, nobody's saying it's black and white. But what I am saying is there's always a little bit more black or a little bit more white. And with Joe Biden, when you come out and say straight up, well, if somebody gives me $200,000, I will be a little bit more.
Yeah, but you're trying to make it all black, and I just can't go there because I think some of it might be more gray. Maybe it leans more.
But I'm not trying to make it all black. What I'm saying is there is enough black that you can't pretend like the white is enough for us to ignore the black. That's what I'm saying.
Listen, you and I know, I've said this several times, I do not have very much trust in the Democratic establishment, nor Joe Biden. I'm not expecting him to pass much of anything. But do I think he's more likely to set forth a couple of Supreme Court justices that are likely to be moderate or liberal compared to Trump? Yes, I do. I have a higher trust in that happening than I do with Donald Trump, who's already put forth 2 conservative judges, and will likely follow it up with 2 more.
I'm saying, but where are we getting this idea that somehow Joe Biden will be different in that regard?
I think I can't prove it to you. I can't prove it to you. I can only tell you based upon him being vice president and setting forth some of the policy changes he's made, though they're small. So
your argument is reliant on me to have faith in a historic Democrat, a Democratic Leadership Council members, where they have given me zero reason to have faith.
Well, I have more faith than Donald Trump setting forth absolutely without a shadow of a doubt 2 conservative judges. So I'd rather go with the possibility that won't happen than I would go with the absolute that it will happen.
So for me, this is why it was important for the DNC not to cheat, right? Because maybe, God forbid, maybe Bernie Sanders runs and he loses, right? But the excitement that he generates turns out they win the House and the Senate. Now, Trump almost becomes neutered if the Democrats do what they're supposed to do, even if he wants to nominate these judges. But that's not what's happening because the DNC cheated, right? I mean, we can go into all the details about it in another episode. But for the sake of this, they cheated and they know that they cheated.
Okay, now you're getting into a totally different discussion. Okay.
But my point is, they know what they did. They're unapologetic about it. Tom Perez is getting sued by the Iowa Democratic Party right now for what he pulled after, and then trying to blame them for something he ordered them to do. Right.
But see, look at where all your attention, Niko, all of your attention. Look at where all your attention. Look at where all of your attention, your energy is going. It's going toward the DNC because you somehow believe that.
Specifically, that's why I'm talking about the DNC.
No, I'm saying that you keep putting you're creating a codependent relationship with them. Like if we withhold our votes.
Here's my thing. I just had a conversation yesterday with a Green Party official where I was explaining to them this. I'm like, okay, you see what's happening with the DNC. You see how they're treating their supporters. You see what happened with the RNC and how they were like, man, we don't like Donald Trump, but we're going to fucking lose this election if we don't give the people what they want. The Green Party is on the path to falling closer in line with the DNC as far as their primary is concerned right now than the RNC. And I still made the exact same point because I'm talking to these people every day. I'm on the ground, know what pisses off voters. And taking their voices away from them will surely piss them off. The DNC just happens to be the topic because we're talking about Joe Biden. I would say the same thing if we had an issue with the Green Party.
Okay.
The name of the party, it doesn't change. But for your argument to even begin to sway me, I would have to have faith in a DNC that is giving me zero reason to have faith.
So what's the point of withholding anything other than this idea that people are going to wake up and they're going to all want to flock to the third party or something like that?
It's not about just waking up and wanting to flock to the third party. It's a combination of a few things. No, nobody's saying people are just going to wake up and go third party. Some people might. A lot of people did. Millions of people did in 2016, and they have record-breaking numbers because of that. But also, it's a matter, there is inherent value in not rewarding an illegitimate candidate after they cheat. They took money.
What is the
from
inherent value? Tell me the inherent value.
The inherent value of not rewarding somebody for bad behavior?
Yes, correct. Tell me what that looks like.
So they know that there are consequences, and they will think about those consequences the next time they're about to engage in something like that.
So
now, if they don't think about the consequences and they continue to lose, that's also beneficial for the other point that I made, that people will become more disenchanted with the Democratic Party and go to other third parties. That's why you have to have a multi-pronged approach. You can't just have a vacuum of power. You also have to have something to fill that vacuum. And that's why you need to hold them accountable to see if they act right. And if people start to see, wow, they just really don't give a damn about us, well, I'm just going to look for other options. Okay. That's the point.
So do you feel like progressives are larger base and more cohesive than they were in 2016, yes or no?
That's irrelevant to my point, because progressives aren't the only ones who vote in the general election. I'm the last person DNC needs to worry about winning over. 44%. I mean, I'm independent too, but when you're talking about 44% of the electorate,
hold on, it's 36. It's around 36 to 40%. And furthermore, you can't just assume that all of that is going to go over to the left.
As of December 2019, it was about 44%.
I'm looking at Gallup poll, the latest Gallup poll taken on March 13th. 36% independent, 30% Democrat, 30% Republican. As a matter of fact, the Democratic Party since 2016 has grown by 5%. That's why you saw such a strong showing for Joe Biden. 30% Democrat, 30%. I can take you back to 2016. I have the numbers right here. We're looking at January, December, November. Okay, right here. 25 to 30%. Now it's about the same actually. It's 26 to 30%. It's been holding pretty much steady. Whereas the progressives have actually gotten weaker and more fractured. So is this strategy working?
How they got? That makes no sense. I'm confused.
Look at
where you said
we all have different ideas. We all have different ideas about what to do. Like some want to go to Yang, some want to go to Tulsi, some want to have third party, some want independent party, some want Green Party, some want to withhold votes, some want to go over to the Democrats.
But how many of those people are also Democrats? Because you're doing math for one side, but not factoring in. Well, shit, how many people have been forced to be Democrat because of the state that they're in and have to vote in closed primaries that are actually not Democrat, who are actually independent-minded? Because that's largely what is causing the fracturing and splintering within the Democratic Party itself. You don't have a unity committee if our influence over the Democratic Party wasn't that heavy. But we do have a much heavier influence over the Democrats than people would like to think we have.
Well,
so we just no influence whatsoever. That's why I don't tell people, like, whenever they say, Tulsi should drop the party altogether, I'm like, why would she give up the leverage? If she can force them to make moves and insult her and attack her and go at her publicly just because she's in the party, then she should stay. Why?
No, I'm not suggesting that we can't do two things at the same time. So that's not what I'm saying. I get why Tulsi's doing what she's doing, what Bernie's doing, what he's doing. I get all that. So I'm not one of those.
You're making regarding like this idea that we just vote for Joe Biden and then do what? What do we do next?
Yes, that's exactly the point I've made since the beginning. We need to form a strategic coalition that has a voting base, voting bloc similar to the evangelicals and their relationship to the RNC. But we did have that.
We literally had a unity commission with a massive voting bloc in Bernie Sanders, who only lost, quote unquote, by 3 million votes to Hillary Clinton. We just had that.
The problem is they did the same thing the DNC did back in 2016. They already assumed who was going to be the nominee, and that's Bernie Sanders.
So my point is,
one of the only ones that were really, really fair, you, a handful of progressive YouTube hosts that were truly fair with Tulsi, truly fair with Yang and Williamson. Mike kind of was at the beginning. David Pakman, he's just kind of, whatever. But my point here is like TYT, everybody else, Michael Brooks, they completely destroyed Tulsi. They completely smeared them. They were unfair. They created all kinds of lies. So that gave the impression to people, this unity you're talking about. Maybe you were part of that, and maybe you were very genuine and trying to be open.
No. When I say unity commission, I mean there was a literal unity commission within the DNC that was started by.
That's what I'm saying. It needs to be outside of the DNC. It needs to be independent of the Democratic Party.
But that's not the argument that you were making. My point was you were saying that there needs to that we were too fractured and that's why things ended the way they did. But I'm saying no. The Bernie movement which was the most, the most influential wing of the party. That's why people literally got on stage and pretended like they were him for a goddamn 3
But
or 4
not enough
months.
Americans are democratic socialists.
Enough.
Not enough Americans identify with being a democratic socialist.
But it's not about identifying as democratic socialists. I'm not talking about ideology. I'm not talking about any of that shit. I'm talking about the raw goddamn numbers. The raw numbers show Bernie broke a shitload of records for unique donors. He had broke records for the fastest to reach 1 million registered volunteers. He broke, the numbers they were.
How did that pan out in the primary?
You know how it panned out in the primary? This is what I'm talking about. There was no accountability for 2016, was there? So guess what the DNC did? They did the same. No, excuse me. They were worse in 2020 than they were in 2016 because so many people got caught up with the Bernie this, Bernie that, Bernie this, Bernie that, and whenever it got time to do the same thing over again, the DNC said, "Wow, they're really so focused. They're focused on Twitter memes and this nonsense and that." That was all distraction.
I'm trying to understand, Niko. I really kind of cut to the chase of this because I really want to understand. What is your strategy? What's your strategy?
I told you what my strategy is.
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding it.
It's accountability. It's accountability. Because without accountability in all aspects of electoral politics,
well, what is it going to bring you? What is that accountability going to bring you?
What is accountability? I've already explained what accountability brings you. First of all, I feel like I should have to explain this. If my kid fucks up and I spank them for it to make sure they don't do it again, he knows you do that shit again, you're gonna get spanked.
I get that. Okay, I understand that, but did they get that? Did they get that in 2016? Did they learn that lesson in 2016?
No, they did not have. Okay, so how was the Democratic Party? They were held accountable in one way alone. That was a loss of Donald Trump, which they thought they could control the outcome of. They thought that getting Donald Trump in, which by the way, hell, they were more responsible for Donald Trump than progressives were, so they were fucking giving him billions of dollars in free coverage, but they didn't get punished. They still were doing crazy fundraising numbers. Like, yeah, the DNC itself, got punished, but not the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton herself got punished, but not the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi's been raising more money than ever, and so is the RNC, unfortunately.
So you actually have this notion that we're going to punish them to the point they're going to lose, and they're going to wake up, and they're going to finally realize in 2024, you know what, we can't win without the progressives, so we need to throw them a bone.
You aren't giving me enough time you cut me off midpoint. You said, what are the ways? I gave you one way. I said, first, we need accountability, but you asserted that this loss to Donald Trump was accountability. That was not accountability. We did not actually get to the state. In fact, they spent the last 3 years ensuring we don't hold them accountable, trying to convince us that Trump was the worst possible punishment we can give them.
And they're going to do differently? No. They're going to do differently for the next 4 years?
Hold on,
Trump?
Let me finish. Did they? They had not been held accountable. That was my point. You try to jump logic here. You're arguing now your point that you made, saying that, oh, well, they did get held accountable. I'm arguing, no, they have not been held accountable. How have they been held accountable?
Point is, I still have to understand, what does that accountability look like? Please let me know. What does that look like?
Accountability, so we have election integrity issues that no one wants to talk about, like the fact that the exit polling is, for some reason, only off in the Democratic primary. No other primary in the nation from any other party has the exit polling been this bad.
So you're talking about a lawsuit? Is that what you're...
So I'm talking about whatever. So there's different forms. Sometimes it may take a lawsuit. Sometimes it's wall-to-wall coverage, exposing these type of things so that lawsuits can be uncovered. There's also...
But we've been doing that for the last 4 years.
Say what?
We've been doing that for the last 4 years, exposing election fraud and election rigging. There's been books written on it.
That's not true. Some of us have. Some of us. But I know for a fact...
What, didn't Jill Stein take it to court and she was laughed out of court saying they have a right, DNC has a right to do whatever they want behind closed doors in a smoke-filled room?
That's not true either. Okay, hold up. You're conflating two cases. You just conflated Jill Stein's case and my case, actually. My case, there was an argument made that they can do what they want to behind closed doors. But if you read the official opinion of the judge at the time, he said that we do not recognize the trivialization of your charter in that way. And he went on to explain exactly why that was not the case. So people keep saying that like it became legal at that point.
Okay, so tell me how yours is different from Jill Stein's case.
What Jill Stein was trying to do was to reconcile the voting machines that showed massive irregularities and suing to get access to those machines. Mm-hmm. Some states she was turned away, but it wasn't because of the illegitimacy of the case, probably because they were very legitimate cases. But in Pennsylvania, she won. And guess what it resulted in? Paper ballot. And so now we have another layer of accountability, all because Jill Stein took the first step in accountability, which is first try to hold these motherfuckers accountable and acknowledge that there was a problem to begin with. We, as a movement, have acknowledged some of the problem, but ignore the inconvenient side, the inconvenient problem, because election fraud or election integrity issues seem to be too grand for these people, or getting out and organizing for third parties, or getting out and organizing to push these ballot initiatives is too hard for some people. They don't understand how to do it. They never learned how to do it. And therefore, it's much easier to rely on a hero or try and say, well, if we vote this way this time, things will get better for us, when there's no proof of this. So enough people have at least realized we can't reward the Democratic Party. That's the first step. We can't reward them because that's what you're asking me to do, especially if it's not going to be a transactional relationship. There's nothing transactional about giving Joe Biden our vote. There's nothing guaranteed except for there's some stuff guaranteed. He's absolutely going to be a warmonger. We will be setting him up to guarantee damn near guarantee 16 more years of neoliberalism as the world goes to sleep as he sets it on fire. Because that's exactly what happened.
So you're making a lot of predictions that just, I'm not willing to go there. There's so many reasons why. The first is if Donald Trump's reelected, there's a very high chance we will go to war with Iran. He's already shown that to you, anybody paying attention. Because
if he wanted to go with Iran, he would just he would have been going to war with Iran.
No, he would not.
I'm not saying
he knows he wants to. He knows he's got to be reelected. He knows that growing population is against it. Polls have shown a reaction to it. He has fanned the flames already. He pulled us out of the treaty, so he's ready for it. He's just waiting to be reelected, in my opinion.
Why would Joe Biden be any different on the Iran issue?
Well, first off, he will bring us because Obama and Biden are both responsible. At least we're not dealing with another nation that has nukes. That's not our ally.
They also violated the treaty more than anybody else to try and create a reason to push sanctions on Iran. That was always a precursor.
I don't disagree with you, but my point is we can either try to have a treaty with them or we can go to war with them. I think I would prefer going back into the treaty.
Oh, creating a treaty, like what we normally use treaties for historically is to put something on paper for you to violate so that when we go to the United Nations to get support to go blow you off the map, that we have something saying, look, and we gave them a chance, look, and they didn't follow, so we're justified in doing what we want to do to them. That's what we do.
I get your skepticism. I get that. But if Obama and Biden wanted to do that, they had plenty of reason to do that. They had several years, or at least 2 or 3 years to do that. They didn't show any signs of that. And it wasn't just the United States. It was an international community, because it's a treaty that has to be recognized by the international community. This is where the U.S. can't just arbitrarily, come in and say, oh, look, you violated this, let's go to war. This is an international treaty.
We literally went in there and said, look what you did. You violated this when they didn't violate it, and forced a bunch of countries to sanction them off of launching a satellite. Nothing. They did not violate it in any way. Most international bodies said they didn't violate it, but because if you were an ally with the United States and you wanted to see you get some,
you're going into a different discussion. You're going to a discussion of sanctions. Neither you and I agree with sanctions.
There's no guarantee on either side that they're going to make things better or worse in Iran, based off of what history has shown. I agree with you. Trump is not really good on Iran, not to the degree he should be. But also, Trump has shown to be more malleable on foreign policy than Joe Biden has. We know that he is better on North Korea.
I know I know he has a really bad temper, and I know he's irrational, and he's really has destroyed international, our image and our relationships to NATO, so forth and so on. So I'm not ready to just jump on the, look at Donald Trump train. Look how great he is. We're in peacetime. You know what? We have more drone strikes under Trump than we have under Obama. Do you realize that?
What does that mean? But they're both shitty when it comes to foreign policy.
Yes, they are. Absolutely. Okay, so really this is really coming down to discussion of what do we want our social, political, economic environment to look like. For us, that Donald Trump is just playing around when he says he wants to be a dictator, he wants to rule forever. He has all authority. That he's definitely going to appoint more conservative judges. They're going to set us back for the next 50 years. Do we want to work within that environment to build a progressive coalition, or do we want to work in an environment where we're just going to do what we've always done when Obama was around? Maybe Biden might do a little better. He will likely appoint moderate
Trying to do what
judges.
we've always done. That's not a good thing.
Not you and I, but I'm talking about the Democrats. They could just do what they've always done. But at least we're not going toward dictatorship. At least we're not, definitely going to have conservative judges.
Do you understand how much more peaceful the region of Russia and Ukraine is right now, like in that general area? Do you know why? Because Ukraine was actually allowed to hold their own election where they elected a popular progressive president. But because Obama was in power, which really meant that Hillary Clinton was in power, and all of their connections, they overthrew the Ukrainian government and had installed a puppet government for like the last decade or so. And so because of Joe Biden or the next Democratic elite not winning, there was a ripple effect that allowed democracy to take place in other places. Now, I'm not saying that that's always going to be the case for every situation, but what I'm saying is when you try the same old thing that hasn't worked at all, you're going to end up with the same old result. We know Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden are all part of the DLC, and based off of their actions, they all tried to further the agenda of the Democratic Leadership Council. And we know what that agenda is. It is one of neoliberalism. It is one of warmongering. It is one of lying and deception and propaganda.
You and I both, we could argue back and forth about who's better, Trump or Biden. Who would be better in foreign policy, Trump or Biden? But the truth is, you and I both know neither one of them will likely be better or worse than the other. Okay, they pretty much will be a washout.
No. There will be one who's better than the other. Trump is better than Joe Biden in foreign policy, and that's not great for Donald Trump. That's horrible for Joe Biden. Because I don't have to wonder how the relationship between him and Kim Jong-un would be. He's already made that clear.
I'm sorry, Tulsi Gabbard seems to disagree with you on that.
On what?
About Trump's foreign policy approach.
She says that Trump should not allow for us to renege on agreements for other countries or place troops in other countries or attack other countries if we're trying to openly negotiate with North Korea for them to denuclearize. And I agree with Tulsi on that. There's nothing. What's the problem?
I agree with her as well. But
I would rather him be brash rhetorically, brash on Twitter, and then he gets in front of Kim Jong-un.
So you're defending Donald Trump now.
In this instance, yeah. What's wrong with that?
So why don't you vote for him? If you really believe that we're going to make some changes that are toward the positive direction, why don't you vote for Donald Trump?
Why would I? No. What does that have? You're making no sense right now. You're making these massive leaps in logic.
You clearly believe he's better for foreign policy.
You are the one who is making the argument that things will be better under Joe Biden.
I didn't say that. I already said that I think it'd be a washout.
Better chance for positive change to happen under Joe Biden, and you were insinuating that Joe Biden was somehow going to be better than Donald Trump on foreign policy when there's literally nothing whatsoever. I can go off of...
I didn't say general foreign policy. I said Iran. When it like most likely we'd get back into the Iran treaty. Now that's all I said.
Anything unless he's going to bolster it to make it a bilateral treaty.
Well, I want to avoid a war with Iran. Let's put it to that way.
Huh?
I want to avoid a war with Iran.
Okay, where do you get the idea that war will be avoided, but I have a higher chance of being avoided under Joe Biden? That's what I'm trying to get.
Most likely to save face, Joe Biden will work to get us back into the treaty, have nice relationships with Iran for the first couple years. Likely will delay.
Nice relationship. Okay, no. But we didn't have a nice relationship with Iran under Barack Obama and Joe Biden. So where are you getting this idea? Just because it's a treaty, that means it's a nice relationship. We use treaties to extort people all the time.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think ultimately, yes, I do think ultimately the agenda of the neoliberals is take over the planet, have a one-world government, all that stuff. I get it. The 21st century agenda. I get it. But my point is, Donald Trump is ready to fire. The moment he gets reelected, he already has the artillery to go straight into Iran already. The relationship between the U.S. and Iran is very bad right now. All he has to do is flick a switch. He's already set up Israel, funded them with all kinds of missiles. He's ready. All right, so it's
That's
just
already,
the only reason
already
he's
been
delayed
known.
it. The only
That's
reason he's
already,
delayed it is because he knows that he's got to get reelected first.
that's not why. That's not why. You know why he delayed it? Because Iran made it clear that if we retaliated against their retaliation, they had a bunch of missiles pointed at key areas in this country and our allies' country.
And
That's why.
that would change under Biden.
And he fired
That would
people
change
who were
under
putting him in
that would change under Biden.
we wouldn't
The missiles.
I don't believe so. I don't believe that we would assassinate Soleimani so boldly under Biden.
Well, I'm not going
But
to
that doesn't
defend
really-
Donald Trump's position. Clearly, you'd like to do so. Like I don't have the faith that Donald Trump is
Hold
not.
on. No. It's not about defending Donald Trump's position or defending Donald Trump. It's about the facts. It's either it's a fact or it's not. I'm not going to change the facts because it's Donald Trump.
You're
It's like
predicting
you
the
change
facts.
the facts just because of Biden. What we know is what we know.
What
We can
do
predict
you
off
know
of
about
we know. We
what
can
he
predict
will
off of
be?
plans.
What do you know about how he will behave if he's reelected?
He's a megalomaniac who cares a lot about what other people think of him, regardless of whether or not he acts on that concern of what people think of him. He does care a lot, and he's shown to be malleable.
Is that why
For
he
example-
appointed John Bolton and Pompeo? Is that why he did all of that? Because he cares about what people think about him?
He fired John Bolton, and he made a whole damn spiel about it on Twitter because of
Pompeo's still part of the group.
cares about-
He's got lots of warmongers on
Okay,
his round table.
But I didn't say what I agree with Pompeo's stick. What I was about to do before you interrupted me again was explain to you how we know he is malleable. For example, when Tulsi put out there on, I believe it was on Fox News or The Hill, when this quarantine started, this emergency UBI does not go far enough. We need to call for evictions and mortgage payments to be suspended. Then Trump, almost the next day, decided to make that announcement to the HUD that he's recommending that the same thing that Tulsi suggested happen. That is one example. He also decided to use Medicare to pay for all the COVID-19 testing and treatment and make it free at the point of access for anyone who may be suffering from it. That was partially because of Tulsi and other people, but he's malleable. What was Joe Biden saying in the exact same scenario? Reopen the marketplace. That's what he was saying. You want me to be mad at certain things because it is Donald Trump.
That's not factual. Joe Biden didn't say reopen the marketplace. He came out long before Donald Trump saying that we need to have isolation, we need to test people, we need to have a ban in travel. This was way back in January that he was talking about this. We need to have people, diplomats, to go to China to figure out what's going on over there. This was back in January.
One, he just has not earned our vote, right? We can't ignore history. We wouldn't ignore history for Tulsi. We wouldn't ignore history for Bernie. Well, some people would, but we definitely cannot ignore history for a candidate that we've all acknowledged is horrific. And pretend like, once again, that he was legitimately elected into the nomination, because he was not. Whether you look at foreign policy, I mean, when you think about it, people, this man's son died of cancer, and he spent a majority of his time, or a good amount of his time, when it came to the medical industry, making sure those same cancer drugs are unaffordable to the everyday person in various countries. The same man who would literally pretend as if Donald Trump was guilty of something when it came to this impeachment thing with the Ukraine that he was actually guilty of. He literally on video bragged about withholding aid because his son was on Burisma, was about to be prosecuted, and he was demanding that the government of Ukraine fire the prosecutor. And at that time, of course, there was a Clinton puppet government. We can't pretend like this man didn't say he was going to veto Medicare for all. In other words, he knows how popular the policy is. He knew that everybody else was trying to run on it. He knows now even what we're dealing with this pandemic, and he's still saying in the middle of a pandemic, I will veto Medicare for all. We can't have that. When Trump has literally threatened Republicans with Medicare for all, right? We know that he wouldn't veto it because he actually supports the policy, even though he won't fight for it under that current brand, but he supports the policy. We also know that Trump could have started World War III. He didn't. Now, that's always up in the air. We literally have no idea, but he didn't. We know that he's fired Bolton. And he didn't just walk out. He fired Bolton. He fired Mattis. Well, it was a combination of him walking out and being fired. He was on the way out anyway. And the reason why is because Mattis was upset he wouldn't go far enough, basically, which is like a weird reason to leave. But that's what he was saying about Trump. Remember, Mattis was trying to get Trump to be more hawkish on Syria, and he wouldn't do it. Trump is a problem, but he's the symptom of a larger problem. Joe Biden is in that category of being part of the larger problem.
Okay, so Niko,
So that's how we
I
end
think
up with
that most of the
another-
listeners are very much aligned with the understanding that Biden has got a bad history and likely will be a bad president.
Well, you asked me to
And
explain
couple
why I
with,
think
well,
that
let's
Joe
move
Biden
from
is
there.
the
Let's
answer.
move from there. Now, like you said that you feel like Trump might be somewhat reasonable. Now, that's part going into why you think not voting for Biden.
Not as much reasonable as he is predictable in certain instances. Also, he's not predictable in certain instances, which is also a nice change from the predictability of the neoliberal agenda that Joe Biden will push forward. Now, my solutions include things like holding your people accountable. For example, like I just said in the beginning of this video, I decided to hold the Democratic Party accountable by suing them for a lot of money, and mostly to get them into the discovery stage so they can now tell everybody exactly how they cheated us in 2016. Now, some people might introduce a new lawsuit. It's quite possible. Covering the DNC fraud that we saw during this election or the last one is a big deal too. And we saw what could happen if people join in, like on covering this type of thing, like the Terry Reid situation. At first, mainstream wouldn't even touch it. But we have to understand that even though the mainstream media now is touching it, but it isn't the way they should be, right? They're trying to discredit her. That's still a win for us because it's in the conversation now and people will begin to objectively observe whether or not the things that we're claiming is true. Other ways, run third party, become part of a third party, help build up third parties. That's important. And of course, also organizationally work with groups that introduce ballot initiatives or work to introduce ballot initiatives
And
yourself.
much faith do you have in any of those strategies? You know, first off, your lawsuit, like where is that currently and how long will you think?
We're in the Supreme Court right now. Lawsuits take a while, right? So it's not like it's going to be a year when you introduce it. But just having that lawsuit loom over them has led to positive outcomes in some ways. Tim Canova exposed Brenda Snipes because she destroyed those 200,000 ballots out here in Broward County. And guess what? Brenda Snipes is now fired. Did they still cheat for Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Absolutely. But one character who was not only helping Debbie Wasserman Schultz when stopping Tim Canova in that instance, she was also working to stop other progressives and presidential candidates from getting.
Okay. So what is the basis of the lawsuit that's at the Supreme Court level at this time? Like what is the basis of the argument?
That they defrauded. They took money away from various factions of the Democratic Party. There are three different classes under the false pretense that they were acting even-handedly and objectively as required by their charter. And so because they're a nonprofit organization, they have to adhere to the fiduciary duty outlined in their charter and also the fiduciary duty that they have to their donors, because that's the number one way that most nonprofits get sued. They say something in their charter or their rules and bylaws.
And why did it fail at the lower court levels?
It was a jurisdictional issue. They essentially wanted to make sure that we had that he had the jurisdiction to even make a ruling on a case like that before we go forward with it. Then we went to the 11th Circuit Appellate Court and we won on two of the issues, and we didn't necessarily.
2 out of how many?
2 out of 3. But the thing was, they wanted to get more specific detail, and so we just submitted a writ of certiorari to basically try to amend the complaint. So then it goes back down to the 11th Circuit Court. They hear that one issue, we win that argument, we're in the discovery stage.
Okay, and I want to commend you for being part of that whole thing. So thank you for doing that. In terms of Donald Trump, it seems that you feel the next 4 years, this talk about him wanting to rule forever, have full authority, the conservative judges, he doesn't believe in science, he doesn't believe in climate change, at least for the next 4 years, maybe longer. How much does that concern your thought space, and why or why not?
Because I know that Donald Trump is full of shit, I don't take him at his word for almost anything, including some of the things that people like to sensationalize. He almost preys on this sensationalized reactionism that's come from the left regarding everything he says. The things that he says gets more attention than some of the policy issues that he has, or some of the positive things that he may have done. For example, something that's very important to me as a black male, whereas we had Joe Biden, knowing the negative backlash that would come of it, he is unapologetic about the 94 crime bill. You know what Donald Trump does instead? He says, I'm going to one-up you. I'm going to work with Democrats to introduce the First Step Act to reduce the recidivism rate, give an actual chance for rehabilitation in these prisons, and to get people jobs after, and the ability to reduce their time by doing vocational training. Like, he was trying to one-up Joe Biden. So no matter what he says about this same thing about DACA, right? He's like, oh man, DACA is so bad, and I'm gonna get the Democrats didn't get rid of his wall like they said they would. He didn't get rid of DACA in practice like he said he would. But everybody was so caught up in the rhetorical battle between the two that nobody was seeing some of the bad things that he was doing behind the scenes with the Republicans. So what I don't want to happen is what I know will happen if Joe Biden becomes president, which is most of the country goes back to sleep. And we don't have that frustration and that anger that we could channel into productive organizational victories for the populist movements on whatever side of the fence you may be on. So that's what I don't want to happen. And if Joe Biden gets elected, it's highly possible that a lot of people will go back to sleep.
Fair enough. I'll just counter some of those. The first is going back to sleep. I think it's our duty as the YouTube community, progressive YouTube community, social media community, all of the supporters of the progressive movement, to keep that alive and kicking, and to be mindful. So that's the first point. Is I feel like relying on ramping up emotions. I feel like right now we're at a very tender spot in America where it could literally lead to civil war potentially. Like you've got the Proud Boys and you get Antifa. You already saw how quickly that ramped up just in the past 2 or 3 years under Donald Trump presidency. So that concerns me. I also
what concerns me once again, Ferguson. What the fuck?
Absolutely.
We can't pretend like that wasn't under Barack Obama.
Oh,
we
no,
haven't had
that all festered. This has been festering. This is the American legacy. So I'm not pretending there.
But that's my point. It's like you have these situations, and by the way, obviously the GOP took a lot of advantage of that narrative too, right? They use it as an opportunity to say Trump or Obama wasn't doing enough for black people, but largely people blame police officers and not the man who literally militarized the police. That they were using the weapons that the federal government had gifted them damn near. And so for every Charlottesville, or for every what's the other shit that happened? There's another thing that happened too. But for every Proud Boys march, you had a Ferguson. You had an Eric Garner situation. You had a Standing Rock situation. Okay, we can't pretend like these things are unique under Donald Trump. That's my point. But under Trump, we blame Trump. Nobody on the left blame Ferguson on Barack Obama.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think that Donald Trump is unique in that the mainstream media can use him as a foil to divide the nation in a way that maybe they wouldn't do with Biden. They can ramp it up. They have a vessel by which they can get that going, that dialogue, and accelerate it.
They can use Trump to divide the nation, but at the end of the day, it seems
and he
like
certainly doesn't help. His rhetoric certainly doesn't help either.
Well, yeah, his rhetoric
you cannot tell me sometimes he doesn't throw out dog whistles. That's not. I'm not saying he's racist. I'm not going there. I don't know if he's personally is, or he's just doing it.
He uses dog whistles. Nobody's discounting that. But once again, I'm a black man who understands my political history, and I also know that Joe Biden has used his very, very fair share of dog whistles. If you don't recall, that's all he did to get the 94 crime bill passed. That's how he worked with literal segregationists to stop or to push anti-busing laws. This is his legacy, is using the same dog whistles as Donald Trump without the camera on back then, without social media back then to amplify. But those are a couple of the reasons why this motherfucker was almost unknown in the first 2 times that he ran. That's part of the reason why, is because of his racism and his dog whistles and his sexism.
So getting to some of my other counterpoints is that I know that Donald Trump often, like you said, he's a sensationalist. He says things offhand, gets a reaction, all of that. But at the same time, I know that sometimes he follows through on some of that sensation. So for me personally, I don't feel comfortable with giving him a free pass to show me whether or not he really wants to be president forever.
I didn't say give him a free pass. We see him. Let's be honest. Cause we got to be objective here. We say a free pass. This man not covered wall to wall in legitimate and very much so illegitimate ways too. Everything he does is scrutinized. Like, we can't pretend. We can be honest about the issues with his presidency, but we can't pretend like he's been given a free pass. The man was just held up for an impeachment for something that Biden was guilty of.
Okay,
because they were trying to distract.
Let me
so
compartmentalize that, Niko. Let me compartmentalize that. I'm not referring to the Democratic establishment, mainstream media. I'm referring to the progressive movement. For the most part, I feel the progressive community is generally fair. You know, they're pretty even-handed. Okay. You know, we're willing to criticize the DNC. We're willing to criticize Donald Trump. What I'm referring to is the mainstream media. I'm talking about progressives kind of giving him a free pass by withholding our vote. You know, we have some power. We're probably about, say, 10, 15% of the voting populace, and that's pretty strong. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not willing to give him the opportunity to prove you know, us right or wrong on some of the rhetoric he throws out there. Another reason is, I pointed out earlier, and I'm just going to restate some of the things just as you did. I said earlier, just more in a contained manner, both of us here. Also, I'm not willing to just allow him to just pick the justices, because we know what type of justice he's going to pick. And it's going to overturn potentially abortion. It's likely going to overturn same-sex marriage. And likely overturn all kinds of environmental and workers' rights.
They're not going to overturn same-sex. You cannot give me one instance where there was a conservative, dominate Supreme Court justice bench where they overturn historic, I mean, absolutely historic rulings. There's been not a single time that the idea
of create a climate. It can create. There can be a climate created by which there can be endeavors toward that. They're already the social meter is moving toward the right.
There was a climate created by Obama to even start the conversation of where, or to initiate some of the angst that we saw coming from the white backlash that we've seen this. But I'm not gonna blame Obama for that. Obama fucked up, but I'm not gonna blame him for that and say, well, we know for a fact that this is his fault. Like, a climate is different than, is Joe Biden gonna put in judges where we can guarantee the protection of abortion? And also, do we have anything historically that shows if Trump gets the judges he wants?
I think it's kind of I think it's kind of open that he may or may not. I think with Trump, we absolutely know.
What a better strategy would be for me? This would be a more logical strategy. Would I necessarily agree with it? I don't know, but it'd be more logical. If you say, hey, y'all, fuck Biden, fuck Trump, but you got to get out there to put at least Democrats, try to push these progressives in the House and in the Senate. Don't worry about
that. That's a different discussion. Like, both of us agree with that. You know, we need to do grassroots.
Because now they don't get his fucking judges. Fuck him. They can do to him what they did to Obama, what the Republicans did to Obama. So now that argument gets taken out.
Democrats are not going to do that. You know that, and I know that.
So why wouldn't Democrats do that?
Because they're weak. Because they're too self-interested in the money. You know.
Okay, so what happens if Joe Biden gets a good offer for the Supreme Court? Because that's what's going to happen.
The money are not interested in, most money is not interested in social movements. They're more interested in capital. The only reason
the social movements control a lot of the way capital flows in politics.
That's true, but at the same time, when you've got people like McConnell at the helm, you know, dominating like the Senate, you and I agree at that level that matters. That's a third of the power, right? Of
Senate?
The Senate, the Congress. So it does matter. So we agree there. But my point is, why would you give them any extra help? You know, here's an extra helping hand. Just have a free pass.
Why would I give Democrats anything? What have they shown me?
I'm not giving them anything. I'm simply knowing they're not going to likely do anything. They're not likely going to shift this nation further. We are accelerating to the right. You do realize that, right?
Than George W. Bush was. Do you know he was absolutely worse than George H.W. and he was almost worse than George.
Who are you talking about? Obama?
Bill Clinton. I'm talking about Bill Clinton. So you're talking about two out of the last four presidents have been just as bad, if not worse, than the Republicans on foreign policy. And I would argue that Obama is worse than Trump on foreign policy, depending on which way.
I know foreign policy is likely never to change anytime soon, whether it's Trump, whether it's Biden. So to have that discussion, I feel like it's really a waste of time. So let's go back to domestic policy.
No, you can't just say it's a waste of time because you think it's a waste of time because it's a fact. He pulled out of Afghanistan after Obama promised us to pull out of Afghanistan and never did.
I'm not going to sit here be in a position to defend Obama or Clinton because you and I are on the same page with that.
You can't justify anything with Biden. without somehow, because you can't prove to me with Biden's record that he's going to somehow be better than Trump in any way.
I don't know that he would or wouldn't.
That's my point.
So, yeah, but there's no real point to be made that Trump's going to be better either, because he's being safe right now because he knows he needs to get reelected.
But that's speculative. We don't know if he's being safe.
It's also speculative to think that he may not go into Iran.
Say what?
You're also speculating that we won't go into Iran if Trump is reelected.
We'll get our asses handed to us, and he's not stupid. They want to go to. There is, of course, there's a contingency of the military-industrial complex that wants to go to war with Iran. We can't do it anymore because we've lost the strategic advantage in every way in that region. Whether you're talking about Iraq or their allegiance that we used to have, but now we don't have because we violate international law to assassinate some of them. Like, that's not happening. We're not going to war with Iran because we would get our asses handed to us. And I think even to a certain degree, Trump knows this, or else we would have been there. But but once again, I'm not going to try to speculate off of. I'm not going to say that, I know for a fact Trump is not going to go to Iran. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know that for a fact Biden's going to send us to Iran. But Biden me anything different. But in instances where Biden has shown me something clearly different and Trump has shown me something clearly different.
But I'm not arguing from that point. We agree on that. We don't know if Biden or Trump are going to be better or worse. You've got your idea that you think Trump will likely be slightly better. I think maybe Biden might be slightly better, but who really knows? It's a toss-up in my book. My argument is from the standpoint of domestically, okay? And where are we going economically? Where are we going socially? We've had the tax cuts. Everything is drifting at accelerated rate. Things are drifting right.
How would Biden help that? That's what I'm trying to get.
Biden will either slow it down, slightly move it to the left, or slightly move it to the right.
Like slightly move to the left, slightly. So
otherwise, he won't win re-election.
Biden's not going to get reelected. I mean, he's already too old.
Well, I'm just saying the person to follow, his VP won't get elected.
So I think we could both argue that the Democratic Party is likely going to control Biden's cabinet, right? Like appoint everybody, really make the decisions. It won't really be Biden. He might just be signing some paperwork. I think that we can both agree on that, right?
Yeah, but do you realize that under Obama, Biden, we did drift slightly socially and economically to the left, albeit small? It isn't that Obama was a failure.
We literally became the number one fracking country in the world, and
that's one topic. I'm talking about if you add everything up.
Socially, marriage equality. I'm glad you brought that up. That had nothing to do with Obama. Obama was anti-marriage equality. In North Carolina, I know because I was in college at the time. In North Carolina, there was a case that went to the North Carolina Supreme Court, and that's when Obama and Biden became
words matter, leaders matter. They set precedents. He could have
matter, and leaders do matter, but leaders can also be manipulative, and they can also be
right now. Trump is opposed to protections for LGBTQ, even though it's popular in the United States.
Okay, and
so my point is that leaders can decide to oppose the popular opinion or go
Trump
with it.
Also says shit to get he made it seem for a solid 4 or 5 months that he was going to go balls to the wall against Kim Jong-un. That's what he made it seem like, to the point where the entire left was convinced this man was going to try to start World War III and start by blowing North Korea off the face of the earth. Instead, for the first time in history, Kim Jong-un has walked into South Korea, South Korea has walked into North Korea, and now, unfortunately for us, now they both are suspicious of us. But for that region, that is a net positive that we would never have gotten with Obama or Biden. And we don't have to guess because we had the opportunity and we didn't get it. So
they're still making nuclear weapons in North Korea. Our relationship with them is no better than it was.
Better than North Korea. They don't have the capability. They're trash at that shit.
Well,
they're just not. I'm not saying they're not trying, but also I don't really care if they're trying to make it. I care if they're going to try to use them. That's what my concern is.
Donald Trump is really good at hyping his successes, but when you get down to the bare knuckle brass, he's really empty suit. Okay, so what he has achieved.
Okay, so we put another empty suit in that can get away with everything in silence?
Like you said, we'd hold them accountable. We'd have some leverage. With Trump, we have no leverage.
T held Obama accountable. And now, granted, they were one of the only ones at the time. Maybe them, Sam Cedar.
We weren't awake back then. Progressives were not awake back then. There wasn't YouTube. There wasn't Niko.
We can't even agree to hold Biden accountable and the DNC accountable on the things that we should be holding them accountable for. We want to talk about, well, the DNC only manipulated media when it was not even that. It was like they went well beyond that. They changed the system. They changed the structure of the system. They were rigging it specifically against Bernie. They coalesced at these weird times where like no one else has ever done that. Nobody's ever coalesced around the second place candidate right before Super Tuesday. It never happened. So they were rigging it not one way, but multiple ways. And we, as a unit, can't even agree to hold them accountable correctly in this election. So you now expect me to go forward and expect the progressive movement to accurately hold Biden progressive in any substantive way, not just bitching and saying, man, this is wrong. If we had a
and you're going to be able to hold Trump to accountability. Like, what is he going to do? What leverage do we have, Donald Trump?
Trump breathes.
Huh?
We have a problem. Leverage that's held against Donald Trump is his ego. That's how Trump is forced to make decisions.
He doesn't care about you. He cares about the red hats.
I say, okay, and Joe Biden does care about me. I know that. I know that.
I'm not saying he does. I'm not saying he does. But my point is,
ego.
Donald Trump is not going to cater to you or me.
I'm not talking about being. No, I said Trump cares about his ego. Trump, because of that is a strategic advantage that we don't necessarily have of Biden. Biden's ego, he doesn't even remember what he named his ego last week, okay? He is beholden to his donors. Trump is beholden to one thing and one thing alone, Trump and Trump's ego, okay? But that gives us a strategic advantage in situations where, hell, maybe this time I decide to do something good for the criminal justice.
I do think you're coming from a false premise, though, and your false premise is that the Democratic Party, DNC, is black and white. They're not. They're incrementalists. They do make some changes, albeit very slow and unnoticeable. Generally insignificant.
It's the bill that was used to start the corporate bailout. Do you know that the Democrats were the ones who introduced the bill that was used as the corporate bailout, right? You know that, right? That was Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, I get that. I think it worked. Was it the best approach? Was it the best approach? Of course, we agree it wasn't. But did it work to some extent to get us out of the recession? Yes, it did.
They could have literally just introduced the fucking UBI, the emergency UBI, and said, we're not budging. Because you know what? I have a problem with the corporate bailout, but I might be a little bit more inclined to be a little bit more forgiving if you tried to get us taken care of first. But instead, the Democrats decided, no, first things first, corporate bailout. That's what they decided first. And they tried to fight the emergency UBI.
You see, you're arguing only from the things they did wrong. You have yet to give me anything Obama did correctly or positively.
What? You are supposed to give me this stuff that's Biden supposedly going to do.
Because I'm not here to defend them. I'm not here to defend.
But you are. You're here to defend this idea that voting for Biden is somehow the rational solution that's going to be pragmatic and we will get more under, or we won't move further right. We will slowly drift right instead of moving right at exponential rates, forgetting that under Obama, I was at Standing Rock where I saw a country ignore a woman's eye getting shot out by the damn police department. Like, we're already in there. We're already there. The only thing that Trump has done is exposed it because he's a dumbass. And I would rather have a dumbass who's always telling on himself than a Joe Biden who is very slick.
Well, maybe he is, or maybe he's brilliant and he knows he gets you to think he's dumb.
Marketing-wise, he does have an element of brilliance to him. When it comes to marketing, when it comes to winning the public opinion with the base that he knows he needs to win. But at the same time, but he's also, once again, he telegraphs his plays. That's not Joe Biden. Joe Biden he says Trump doesn't believe in climate change. Okay, that's cool. But you believe in it, and you still do fucked up shit to the environment. Flint did not have water the entire time you were president or vice president.
Yes, I get all that. But at the same time, you're discounting the largest land grab, public land grab in American history. The last time to do so, to protect public lands, was under Theodore Roosevelt. You also disregard that he banned oil drilling out of the Arctic Circle. He also put forth the clean energy policy. He got us into the Paris Accord. So I'm not saying those are I get those are half measures.
So we can go back and forth on a tit for tat for some of the good things Obama did, some of the good things Trump did. But I'm telling you, if we go tit for tat, like seriously, I've already done it over and over and over and over and over and over again. Trump wins in that regard. Does that mean he's a great? No, I'm not.
He doesn't even believe in climate change. He doesn't even believe in science. He didn't even believe in this cold. Look at that CV crisis. Look how he handled it.
But Joe Biden believes in climate change and believes in science, and yet he is still almost just as bad if not worse, when it comes to some things in climate.
I think there's nuance here, and I think that when it comes to climate change and believing in science, Joe Biden's better.
No, it's how? Yeah, you can believe it. You can believe this shit. That makes him worse, my man. It makes him worse when you know the consequences and yet you still do the wrong thing anyway.
Because the data shows that pollution, water cleanliness, air quality, all those things improved under Obama and Clinton, and now they're worsening under Trump. And the greenhouse gases, the temperature was actually beginning to somewhat slow down the acceleration. Now under Trump, it's gone back up rapidly.
So all this stuff, right? We can give Obama credit where credit is due, but most of this stuff is state-based. So if the state does not do
boy, now Trump is responsible for anything good that he does. But when it comes to the Democrats, that's the governors. You know, they get credit for that.
No, I'm saying that this is a fact because, for example, California, when it comes to climate change, recycling, and taking care of the environment, has been leaps and bounds better than Michigan, where they literally have water that will
I'm
kill
not
you.
saying that some governments are not better than others.
I'm not going to give Obama credit for the good work that some people did.
They really are. They're superimposed. They're superimposed. You and I know they're superimposed. They're overlapped. They're both jointly responsible for the good and bad that they do. Okay, it isn't like one or the other.
When it comes to something, it is one or the other. Like our governor, who's a Republican, even though he's bad when it comes to some things, he did put it together an environment.
Yeah, I don't know what state you live in, but yeah, I agree. The state of Michigan is really a disaster, has been for several decades.
But with Trump, if he tried to come in and take credit for something that Ron DeSantis did, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that was definitely Donald Trump who decided to put together. No, I'm not going to do that.
We agree on that. We agree on that. But
saying like I'm not. But here's the thing, though. I'm not saying that Trump is better on climate change or better on. But and I do agree with you. He's a climate denier and he disagrees with science. But the problem is with Joe Biden. If you have the right price, he don't give a fuck about science or climate change. He don't care. That's my point. And if he does care, it is only going to be so much as the right corporation can buy him off so they get a monopoly on the market. That is the only way that he'll depend on what the market is, whether it be solar panels, whether it be electric cars, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the only way that he'll
I'm not willing to go to that degree of a character assassination. You know, like for me, yes, I agree. He is bought and sold to a certain extent with money, but to suggest that he has no like service mindset or no heart, you know, like maybe he has a certain mindset of how you get it done. Do you know he wants to overturn Citizens United? Do you know that?
He says that, but he's taking
Obama and Biden both worked toward that ends, but he couldn't muster the support for it.
You can't do both. You cannot do both. That's my point. That's why you can't. Nobody's going to take you serious.
You can do both. It's just that would I do it in the most principled way, like Bernie or Tulsi did, if I were running for president? Yes, I would.
How can you do both?
Because everybody has a different way of strategizing of how to get us there. Now, are there some people out there that who would I most likely trust? Tulsi or Biden? Absolutely Tulsi, because she's like carrying the water. Got it? But to suggest that somebody is doing a certain way doesn't necessarily 100% mean they're distrustworthy. Maybe they just have a different approach.
What if he just literally says, well, somebody donated $200,000 to my campaign. Of course, I'll be more inclined to listen to what they have to say and take their advice. Like he said that. I didn't say that.
We're not disagreeing with that. What I'm saying is not black and white. Maybe there's a little bit of both. Some of it is, give me some money under the table. I'll do a little bit of good. If it were Bernie, he'd do all good and take no money.
I've never, but did you say a little bit of good? Like, no. The little bit of good has like literally never outweighed the whole lot of bad.
I already told you about the data. I already told you about temperatures. Acceleration was slowing down under Obama.
You said
air quality, water quality. But the largest land grab, banning Arctic, circle.
I don't want to hear about water. I don't want to hear about anything environmental under Obama. I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm not saying that your argument is wrong, but I can't ignore you telling me he did this great thing, but then he let in fracking. So numbers can be fucking.
Did I use the word great?
The fact that you let in, I know that you let in fracking because you bragged about it. And we export 93% of our oil now, so because that's definitely better for the world, right? Because
But you do realize you're taking a very black and white my way. It's got to be done this way.
I didn't say it has to be done this way. What I'm saying is the argument that you're presenting is not negating enough of the negatives that I find any clear benefit to the progressive movement or to anything else to say, let's just ignore everything that the DNC did. When they were trying to make a point, we can get away with this and you can't do shit about it. And we're still going to get away with everything. That's the point that they're trying to make, and you're trying to help them make it. That's my point.
Okay, so let's... Because we're going in an hour and a half, let's give you a final thought for about 5 minutes, and I'll give a 5-minute thought. This is a huge topic, so Niko, I didn't expect us to be able to manage this that well. It's really a huge topic, so I'm just great that we were able to not start calling each other names. Anyway, what is your final kind of like 5-minute wrap up, and I'll do mine. I'll not interrupt you, and please don't interrupt me.
So for those who are curious about where to go next, I feel like there's a lot of this decision to endorse Biden or support Biden or vote for Biden is driven by angst of fear that you don't know where to go next. Well, it's okay to not know what's next. We just left a major movement, quote unquote, just ended in the Bernie Sanders campaign, but we learned a lot. Okay. We don't have to go nuclear yet. In other words, we don't have to go vote for Bill Clinton just because our FDR lost. That's not what the next step is. And I'm sure that any great strategist would probably tell you the same thing if they're being objective. What you do is go on to get organizational victories and figure out how to fill in the holes that we didn't have filled in 2015, 2016. But also, you have to acknowledge where these holes are. These things have not been done yet. We have not given a genuine autopsy of 2015, 2016, or 2019, 2020. We have not done so yet, at least at large. When we do that, then we can go on to solutions. But if you push Joe Biden and we get that victory, quote unquote, if you're a Democrat, then what's next? Then everything that gets covered nonstop by those major media organizations, except Fox News, all of a sudden all your causes, they don't matter anymore. We just saw a damn rape victim or an alleged rape victim get silenced by the same organizations that were pushing Me Too to try and use it against Kavanaugh and Donald Trump. They're not going to give you an inch if Joe Biden wins. Now with Trump, yeah, they might co-opt some of our messages. Yeah, they might try and ignore us even to some instances. But okay, that's better than getting utterly crushed by the neoliberal. And we see what happens next, right? When you get crushed by the neoliberal, look at what happened with Bill Clinton. He corrupted the DEA, corrupted ATF, introduced with Joe Biden the '94 crime bill, and we're still dealing with ramifications. That's just one example. We can look at Obama with Flint, the pipeline situation that we're dealing with, that the North Dakotans are still dealing with up there in Standing Rock. That has a long-lasting effect. A lot of the things that Trump does can be reversed. His nasty rhetoric, some of the, his appointees, those can be reversed. But some of the things that we've seen these neoliberals get away with in silence, in the darkness, are irreversible. And that is what we have to try and prevent going forward.
I feel like whether we have Trump or we have Biden, the mainstream media, the DNC, are going to ignore us. As has been shown over the past 3 to 4 years, they haven't been putting front and center any of the progressive agenda. They haven't prioritized it. All we've seen is impeachments. They're not going to change. Again, whether it's Trump or Biden. I think relying on the DNC to do anything for us is foolish. I also believe that there's a nuanced difference, albeit tiny, between Donald Trump and Biden. I do think Biden is slightly better in the whole, mainly because he believes in science, he believes in climate change. Furthermore, I think more likely he's to select a moderate, maybe moderately conservative, as to clearly Donald Trump will pick conservative judges. And that will not just be something we can overturn overnight, because they'll be young judges, they'll be around for at least 30 years. And we want to give Ginsburg, Breyer, who has served this country greatly, a good sending off. It's only right. Trump will just poo-poo them. He will make them look like ridiculous and shame them. We owe everything to the people that have worked strongly and struggled to get us where we are today. Yes, I want to go where Niko wants to go. We are in the same mind. I'm a progressive. I'm principled. I just have a different understanding of where I believe we should go. Niko has his. And I commend the work Niko's doing. I mean, that's just outstanding, and I hope it goes far. but I just don't want to rely just on that. Like I'm not saying he's saying only that. I get that, but what I'm saying is I want to create a climate whereby we can be legal. I do not trust that Donald Trump will keep protesting legal. I do not trust we won't go to civil war. I've seen the escalation over the past 2 to 3 years, and yes, there was Ferguson, but the escalation of the division between races at the level of where we're seeing Antifa and Proud Boys is all we need to start a civil war and tear and rip this nation apart. And I'm just not willing to give Donald Trump that pass. I'm just not willing to do it. I'm not willing to do it also for the Supreme Court justices that will change this nation. We're already accelerating the drift to the right. Yes, we were moving slightly to the right in some economic issues under Biden and Obama, but we were also moving somewhat on social issues. Justice issues, we were moving to nowhere land, to hellscape. I get it. But we're accelerating that hellscape now. Also, look at the way Trump doesn't even believe in science. He doesn't believe in climate change. He called this coronavirus a hoax. It resulted in far more deaths than we should have had. At least Biden had a plan in place already that Trump defunded, a preparedness plan. Was it underwhelming? Yes, it was, but at least there was something there. And so I just don't trust Trump can handle things. I think he's a mitigated disaster. I think he's a media giant. He's he's brilliant and like spinning things. But when it comes to being an executive in a political position, in the most powerful position on the planet, I don't trust him. I think he's a disaster, and it could be the end of us all. And I am not willing to give him another chance. 3 years. Look at where we are. It's just bad all around.
I just find it hard to believe that the one who's a monster behind closed doors is somehow better. But I guess we have to agree to disagree there.
Look, Niko, you and I know we agree that we think Biden, Obama, all of that, the whole camp, the Clintons, they're just a mess. I get it. But I think the difference is nuance. And I think where they are nuanced differences between Trump and Biden, they are quite significant and important.
Well, I mean, look, to each his own, but for me and for many people who look like me, have experienced Biden's policies firsthand, you're right, there is a nuanced difference. And it isn't the difference that I think that you might be pointed to, because there is a nuanced difference where Biden's policies are literally still gripping society, and things that he's worked for are still hurting society today. Now, I'm not saying that there's going to be any difference with Trump. Like he's going to have long lasting, but most of his stuff can be reversed.
What's the name of that the football player that kneeled down? I can't think of his
Colin Kaepernick.
Yes, Colin Kaepernick. Trump is completely, like attacking him, and you can't even, like with Obama, he would have at least respected that. Like Black Lives Movement is considered a joke because of Trump. He's part of it. I'm not saying he's the entire reason. I'm not saying he's the entire reason, but he certainly isn't helping.
Fortunately, under Obama, and there's a few reasons why that is. But even with my thing is, when Trump actually brought attention to Colin Kaepernick, it helped him more than anything. To be honest with you, the NFL would have behaved how they chose to behave regardless, because they're a bunch of dickheads anyway. But my thing is, rhetorically, I've been and this might be a personal thing. I've been affected by so many real policies as politicians in empty suits feed me feel-good rhetoric. I don't really care all that much about feel-good rhetoric coming from one side, where you have an alleged rape accusation and you are silent on it, and so is the mainstream media, or they ridicule Tyree. Don't give me the fake sympathy when I know how you would behave if the situation really were to occur, or if you had a chance to introduce some policy about it. I know because I've seen it already. So rhetorically, it might seem good to go back to the feel-good days of smooth-talking ass Obama and Bill Clinton, where at least the nation was nice and it didn't seem like there were racial tensions. But I'm here to tell you, the racial tensions that are here during Trump, they were there during Obama, unless you were not experiencing them. Nothing has changed on my end or anybody who looks like me. The racism was there against Mexicans. The racism was there. That's the only reason Trump won, because he played on it. It was already existing.
Yeah, it's definitely deeper. Definitely, I get it. He's just a symptom of something deeper. I get that. but he
But he took on
certainly
the
is not helping. He's accelerating this. Do you realize that the cop shootings are at all-time highs year by year ever since he went into office? It jumped up like 400%. No, yes, I know the word, but now it's gone up like 400%.
And nobody's being held accountable at any level, and that's something that we have to work on as people. But the cop shootings are not going to go down under Joe Biden. There's no data to show that would happen.
Accountability. Well, I do know they'll likely continue to go up under Trump. I do know that. You know, given if we're going to go by his track record,
literally, it just would go up under Trump for the same reason it would go up under Biden. So my point is, I'm not going to blame Trump for something that our justice system needs to.
I feel like we keep falling into the same trap. I feel like we keep falling into the same trap of, you know, who's better. All I'll say is, I just don't want us to go to dictatorship. I'm concerned for the Supreme Court. I'm also concerned that we might be heading for a civil war, and I think Trump is the type of his character is such that he projects himself in such a way that it accelerates that and exacerbates it. And I would rather slow it down so progressives have a time to get their act together. That's really ultimately my message. And I feel like if Trump is allowed in for 4 more years, he's going to accelerate it, and we're not going to matter because there are going to be some other problems we got going on that's going to make our stuff look like small potatoes, okay? And maybe that won't happen, okay? But I'm just not willing to take that chance. I'm just not. And you've got to remember, Niko, you're talking to someone who voted for Jill Stein in 2016, who was a staunch supporter of Bernie Sanders, who opened up my channel because of Bernie Sanders. I'm not just your run-of-the-mill, you know, guy, okay? I've thought this through. I'm not like, you know, I don't freak out for anything. I'm a very rational, logical person. I mean, I was right where you are, Niko. I was right with you. You know, I had a reason to not vote for, Trump in 2016 because, you know, I wanted to give him a chance. You know, I wanted to see if all this stuff that people were saying about him was true or not. Now,
that's not where I was.
You know, like, well, I'm not saying it's the only reason. What really drove me was this idea of a principle, and my idea to that I had to be pure in that principle, strategy-wise, okay? But what I realized along the way is there are many avenues to get there, and that we live in an imperfect world, and you know, as they say, you know, sometimes you want to defeat the dirty pig, you got to get down in the dirt. And this whole idea we can just, you know, like be in this cloud up here, detached from everything, and just, you know, like you know, it's like at some point it feels like you gotta kind of grow up. You know, I'm not talking about you specifically, but at least for me, it felt like a growing up experience, like realizing, you know what, this is some serious stuff we're dealing with here, and I'm just not willing to, you know, put a light under it, you know.
Listen, as a person, like I said, I understand the seriousness of the nature, but I understood it in 2016, and my compass on how to handle this hasn't really been affected. But I do know that even rhetorically, getting concessions like the type that Bernie had seemed to have gotten, that even was beneficial, and those concessions would not have happened if Hillary Clinton would have won. So I mean, that's something to consider. So
yeah, I get that. I'm not saying there isn't some, you know, like benefit to making some demands. I'm not suggesting we're just like totally hands off and like, oh, okay, well, Bernie lost. That's just fair. You know, let's wrap up. You know, I get it. There has to be, you know, some degree of pushing, you know, some degree of leveraging. But to invest my trust into the DNC, they're going to do anything? No, I don't believe in any of that. All I'm going for is the temperament of Trump versus the temperament of Biden. The likelihood Trump is going to take us off the deep end, and the conservative judges versus, you know, Biden. He might still pick conservative judges, but maybe not. You know, I'm willing to at least, you know, go there than the absolute certainty, you know, we're going to get conservative judges for 50 years. You know.
Maybe, but all right, man. Let me get up out of here because I gotta do another interview here pretty soon. But it was good chat.
Well, I enjoyed the discussion. Appreciate it. You take care of yourself, problem, and good luck with that. And I'm really hoping that it goes well. Take care.
Same here. Take it easy, man.
All right, you too. Bye bye.